There is a 40-second stretch in the Season 8 finale of Rick and Morty where the camera pulls back on Mr. Poopy Butthole mid-sentence and reveals he is sitting in a research facility, monitored by scientists, turned in by his own wife. His atomic vibrations do not match any reality the scientists can identify. Not any universe, any reality. The scene ends. Season 8 is over. Season 9 premieres May 24th, 2026. 10 episodes. A finale where Morty is alone with a portal gun. A showrunner who confirmed Evil Morty is now the central villain of the entire show. A studio that drew every frame of Rick and Morty for 11 years quietly replaced before a single frame of Season 9 was animated. Every leak, every confirmed detail, every fan theory with actual evidence behind it, all of it laid out completely. Welcome to Ricktopus. Let's get into it. The season that changes everything. What we actually know. There is a scene in the Season 8 finale of Rick and Morty that most people watched and immediately moved on from. Mr. Poopy Butthole shows up in the post-credits tag, just like he always does. He breaks the fourth wall, talks to the camera, mentions his favorite episode of the season was the one where Jerry turned into an Easter bunny. Classic stuff. Comfortable. Expected. Then the camera pulls back. He is sitting in a facility. Scientists are monitoring him. His wife Amy has turned him in, exposed him as an imposter. And when the scientists run their readings on him, they tell Amy something that stops the scene cold. His atomic vibrations do not match anything in their reality. Not their universe, their reality. Amy glares. The scene ends. Season 8 is over. That single word, reality instead of universe, is the thread that the entire Rick and Morty fandom has been pulling on ever since. And Season 9, which premieres on Adult Swim on May 24th, 2026, is the season that might finally start answering what it means. Season 9 arrives with more confirmed information surrounding it than any season since the show began back in 2013. Adult Swim has released official episode titles, storyboard previews, cast announcements, trailer footage, and direct statements from the creative team. The speculation about what this season will do has never been better informed. There are 10 episodes, airing weekly from May 24th through July 26th, 2026. The full voice cast returns. Ian Cardoni as Rick, Harry Belden as Morty, Sarah Chalk as both versions of Beth, Chris Parnell as Jerry, Spencer Grammer as Summer. Scott Marder runs the show day to day, with Dan Harmon still involved as co-creator and executive producer. Behind the scenes, something changed that most casual fans do not know about. Bardell Entertainment, the animation studio that has been producing the show since the very first episode in 2013, handling seasons 1 through 6 entirely and contributing to seasons 7 and 8, is gone. Season 9 marks the first time in the show's entire history that Bardell has no involvement. Mercury Filmworks, based in Ottawa, and Lighthouse Studios, based in Kilkenny, Ireland, are producing the animation now. Mercury is new to the show. Lighthouse has been involved since season 7. This is not a minor footnote. The studio that drew every frame of classic Rick and Morty, every scene from Pickle Rick, Total Recall, the Citadel episodes, Morty Night Run, did not draw season 9. Whether that shows up on screen is something nobody knows yet because the season has not aired, but the change is real, confirmed, and worth understanding going in. Adult Swim's official description of season 9 addressed this head-on in a way that felt deliberate. The exact line reads, "Season 9 is all certified bangers. No AI slop. Just grade A organic slop made by real humans with real human traits like back hair and cysts. Please watch or we'll have neglected our families for nothing." That is not a typical network press release. That is a creative team that knows the conversation happening in animation right now. The one about artificial intelligence, about what gets automated, about who actually makes the things people love, and decided to respond to it through the promotional copy for a cartoon. The no AI slop line is funny on the surface and pointed underneath. Michael Aweline, the president of Adult Swim, said something about season 9 that is also worth sitting with. His exact words were, "From the first frame, you are going to see great high-concept insanity with some of the best character writing ever done." And then he added, "I know it is my job to say that this show just keeps topping itself, but it also has the benefit of being true." A network president acknowledging that his praise sounds like promotional language and then doubling down on it anyway is a specific kind of confidence. It is either completely genuine or extremely well performed. Based on what the confirmed information about this season actually contains, the case for genuine is stronger than it might seem. Here is what is actually known about season 9 before a single episode has aired. The 10 episode titles were released officially by Adult Swim in April 2026 on YouTube, with Dan Harmon and the full cast present. The titles are There's Something About Morty, Rick's Days 7 Nights, Rick Foo Hustle, A Ricker Runs Through It, Jarebud, Erickerhead, Mort Gully, The Last Rick Forest, Rickuim Mort A Dream, Salute Your Morts, and Field of Dreams. Every single one of those titles is a pun on a real movie or television show. There's Something About Mary, 7 Days, 7 Nights, Rush Hour, A River Runs Through It, Airbud, Eraserhead, Fern Gully, The Last Rainforest, Requiem for a Dream, Salute Your Shorts, and Field of Dreams. The show has always named episodes this way, but looking at the complete list for a single season all at once tells a story about tone. Fern Gully is a 1992 environmental animated movie. Eraserhead is a David Lynch film from 1977 that is surreal and disturbing in a very specific way. Requiem for a Dream is one of the most genuinely difficult movies to watch ever made. Salute Your Shorts is a Nickelodeon kids camp show from the early 90s. These are not random references sitting next to each other. This season is going from children's television nostalgia to some of the darkest films ever put on screen within the span of 8 episodes. That tonal range is itself a signal. The cast confirmation for Salute Your Morts came with a visual. Spencer Grammer, who voices Summer, appeared in promotional material, dressed as the camp counselor character Kevin Ugg Lee from Salute Your Shorts. That is not fan speculation. That is the voice actress of Summer in costume confirming the reference. Episode 9 is a summer episode, and it is set at a camp, and it is built around one of the most beloved Nickelodeon shows of the 90s, Jarebud, which references Air Bud. The film, about a golden retriever who can play basketball, has been confirmed as a Jerry-focused episode. Showrunner Scott Marder said in a Reddit AMA that Jerry has some really memorable moments coming in Season 9. That AMA, held in September 2025, also confirms several other things about the season that are worth laying out clearly. Marder said that Season 9 will contain an episode that deals with false reality in a totally different way from Season 7's Fear No More. He said portal colors do have meaning, which is a line that sounds small but carries enormous weight given how much fan analysis has gone into the different colors of portals seen throughout the show's run. He confirmed that there are arcs coming for Jessica, Evil Morty, Squanchy, Bird Person, and Bird Daughter, and his response to that question was a single word typed in all capital letters: yes. Executive producer Steve Levy added in the same AMA that Season 9 is in post-production, Season 10 is actively in production, and Season 11 is already being written. The show is running further ahead of itself than the public had any idea. Now back to the finale, Field of Dreams, Episode 10, July 26, 2026. Official storyboards for Season 9 episodes were posted to YouTube as part of the promotional campaign. In the storyboards for Field of Dreams, Morty is visible roaming on his own with a portal gun that belongs to Rick, a portal gun that Rick would not normally let Morty use independently. The storyboards are real. They came from Adult Swim. Morty, alone, with the most powerful tool in the show's universe, in the season finale. The Field of Dreams film itself is about a man who hears a voice telling him to build a baseball field in his cornfield. He does it. The ghosts of dead baseball players come back. His own dead father appears. They play catch. It is a movie about grief, about fathers, about the specific pain of losing someone before things were resolved between you. Given that Season 8 spent its emotional energy on Rick sealing away his memories of Diane, his dead wife, the person whose murder defined his entire existence for decades, and given that the Omega device has already been used to erase every version of Diane from every reality, the choice of Field of Dreams as a finale title is doing a lot of quiet work. Dan Harmon described Season 9 as very new and very alien. Scott Marder described Rick as heading in a more constructive direction. Both of those phrases mean that the revenge arc that carried Rick from Season 3 through Season 7, the arc that ended with him finally killing Rick Prime, is genuinely finished. Rick Sanchez spent the better part of 5 seasons of television working toward one goal. He got there. Now he does not have that anymore. What a character does after achieving the thing they built their entire identity around is one of the most interesting questions a story can ask. Season 9 is apparently the season where that question gets explored. The show has also been confirmed through Season 12, with Adult Swim announcing renewals for Seasons 11 and 12 at New York Comic-Con in October 2024. This is not a show winding down. Season 9 is the beginning of a new phase, the post-revenge, post-Diane, post-Rick Prime era of Rick and Morty, and the creative team appears to know exactly what they want to do with it. One more thing before moving forward. Evil Morty appeared in Season 1, Season 3, Season 5, and Season 7. Every odd-numbered season, without exception. Season 9 is odd. The creative team killed off Rick Prime specifically Martyr said, because it teed up Evil Morty as the true villain of the show going forward. Evil Morty still has the plans for the Omega device, the same device that already erased every version of Diane from existence. The math of that situation points somewhere specific, and that somewhere is Season 9. What the season premiere is actually called, There's Something About Morty, is worth sitting with before everything else. Not There's Something About Rick, not There's Something About the Family, about Morty specifically. The grandson, who has spent 8 seasons being pulled along, used as a shield, underestimated, and occasionally pushed past his limits. The one character who Evil Morty represents a version of that broke entirely. There is something about Morty. The show is apparently ready to say what that something is. Before we move on, if you're enjoying this analysis, please consider subscribing. It helps the channel tremendously. What that means for Evil Morty, and what the Omega device sitting in his hands means for everyone else in the multiverse, is exactly where this needs to go next. Section 2. Evil Morty, the villain who was always supposed to win. Season 1 of Rick and Morty has an episode called Close Rick Counters of the Rick Kind. On the surface, it looks like a standard adventure episode. Ricks from across the multiverse are being murdered. Rick C137 gets blamed. He and Morty go on the run while other Ricks hunt them down. Standard chaos. The kind of episode that fills out a first season and keeps things moving. Except there is a moment near the end where the real villain is revealed. A Morty. A Morty who has been controlling a Rick like a puppet, using an eye patch device to mask his own genius-level brainwaves behind the stupidity of a regular Morty. He escapes, he smiles, the episode ends. That was Season 1. The show put Evil Morty on screen in its very first season, let him walk away free, and then spent the next 6 seasons paying that off in ways that kept getting larger and more dangerous every single time he came back. Season 3 gave him control of the Citadel of Ricks, the entire governing body of every Rick and Morty across the multiverse, through a democratic election. Season 5 had him destroy the Citadel entirely, tear open the central finite curve, and escape to a part of the multiverse where Rick is not automatically the smartest being in the room. Season 7 brought him back to help Rick kill Rick Prime, and before he left again, he made sure Rick understood one thing clearly. Evil Morty has the schematics for the Omega device. The Omega device can destroy every version of a single person across the entire multiverse simultaneously. Every variant, every dimension, every reality, gone. Rick Prime already used it once. He used it to erase Diane, Rick's wife, the woman whose murder Rick spent decades trying to avenge, from every single reality that exists. There is no version of Diane left anywhere. The Omega device does not just kill someone, it removes them from all of existence, every branch of it, permanently, and Evil Morty has the blueprints. The pattern of Evil Morty appearing in every odd-numbered season is not a rumor or a guess. It is a documented, unbroken streak going back to the show's first year. Season 1. Close Rick Counters of the Rick Kind. Season 3. The Citadel Arc, the Election, the Purge. Season 5. Unmortrican, the Curve, the Escape. Season 7. The Alliance with Rick, the Death of Rick Prime, the Warning about the Omega device. Every single odd season. Never once broken in 8 seasons of television. Season 9 is odd. Showrunner Scott Martyr did not leave this to chance. In a Reddit AMA held in September 2025, he confirmed directly that Evil Morty is the true villain of the show going forward. The decision to kill off Rick Prime was made specifically because it cleared the path for Evil Morty to step into that role fully. There was, in Martyr's words, a lot of back and forth on this in the writer's room before they committed to it. They chose to end the Rick Prime story and elevate Evil Morty deliberately. That is not fan interpretation. That is the showrunner describing the strategy behind his own season. So what does Evil Morty actually want? This is where the show has been genuinely careful, because Evil Morty is not a simple villain. He does not want to rule the multiverse. He does not want revenge on Rick specifically. What he wants, and what Season 5's Unmortican made devastatingly clear, is freedom. He wants to exist outside the system that was built to keep Mortys weak, scared, and useful. The central finite curve was that system. Every reality inside it was structured so that Rick would always be the most powerful person in any room, which meant every Morty in every one of those realities existed in Rick's shadow, permanently. Evil Morty blew that up and left, but he left with the Omega device plans, and he warned Rick. The warning matters because it was not random. Evil Morty is not impulsive. Every move he has ever made in 8 seasons of the show has been planned far in advance. He was running a long game from the moment he appeared in Season 1 with an eye patch, and that game has now stretched across the better part of a decade of television. When he warns Rick about the Omega device, he is not doing it to be threatening. He is doing it because it serves a purpose. The question of what that purpose is, whether it is a genuine warning to back off or the first move in something much larger, is the question Season 9 apparently picks up. Here is what makes Evil Morty worth examining so carefully going into Season 9, separate from the plot mechanics. He is the only version of Morty that the show has ever presented as having fully broken free from Rick's influence. Every other Morty across the multiverse exists in the same basic condition: dragged along, used, occasionally damaged by the experiences Rick pulls them into. Evil Morty looked at that condition and decided it was unacceptable. He did not become evil in the traditional sense. He became ruthless in pursuit of something that the show clearly wants the audience to partially understand, even if they cannot fully endorse it. The Season 5 Citadel Purge is the moment where this becomes complicated. Evil Morty, having won the Citadel election in Season 3, spends Season 5 revealing what he actually did with that power. He tortured Mortys. He ran experiments. He treated other Mortys as expendable in service of his escape plan. These are not the actions of a sympathetic character, but the show frames them in a specific way. The torture was real, and the victims were real, and none of that is softened, but the goal that drove it was something every Morty in every reality might have some claim to wanting. That tension between what Evil Morty did and what he was trying to achieve is what keeps him from being a flat bad guy. The show knows this. Martyr calling him the true bona fide villain is not a statement that erases the complexity. If anything, confirming him as the central villain going forward means the show is committing to exploring that complexity across multiple seasons rather than resolving it quickly. Now look at the main Morty, the one who has traveled with Rick from the beginning, the one Season 9 is apparently centered on, given that the premiere is called There's Something About Morty. Across 8 seasons, this Morty has changed. Not dramatically, not in a way that gets announced loudly, but visibly. Season 1 Morty is genuinely helpless, anxious, reactive, swept along by whatever Rick decides to do. Season 4 Morty is starting to push back, occasionally. Season 7 Morty is part of the alliance with Evil Morty, helps facilitate the death of Rick Prime, and survives something that would have destroyed earlier versions of himself. Season 8 had Morty spending 17 simulated years growing older alongside Summer in an accelerated timeline, and the episode treated that experience with genuine weight rather than resetting it immediately. Morty is more capable now. That is confirmed by the trajectory of the show across its run. And capability in a Morty, the show has established, is specifically what produces an Evil Morty. Evil Morty's entire backstory, shown in Season 5, was about a Rick who pushed his Morty past the breaking point, pushed him too hard, too far, through too much damage, until something inside that Morty shifted permanently. The show has shown this process happening with multiple Ricks and multiple Mortys throughout its run. It is not unique to the one who became Evil Morty. The conditions that produce an Evil Morty are not rare. They are standard Rick behavior applied long enough. This creates the specific question that Season 9's premiere title seems to be asking. There is something about Morty, something that has been developing, something the show has been tracking across 8 seasons of gradual change. The question of whether that something is a growing independence and confidence, or the early signs of the same trajectory that produced Evil Morty, is genuinely unresolved going into Season 9. The storyboards for the season finale, Field of Dreams, officially released by Adult Swim as promotional material, show Morty alone with a portal gun. Rick's portal gun. The device that makes everything Rick does possible. The tool that no version of Morty is supposed to operate independently. In the finale, alone. That image sits between the premiere's question and the finale's answer. Something about Morty. 10 episodes later, Morty has a portal gun and no Rick visible in the frame. There is a version of that story that is about growth and trust. There is another version that is about something breaking. The show has never been shy about which direction it is willing to go, and Evil Morty is confirmed to have arcs coming. That word, arcs, plural, came from Scott Martyr in all capital letters when asked about characters with storylines in the upcoming seasons. Not a cameo, not a post-credits appearance, arcs. That means multiple episodes, meaningful progression, something that moves from one place to another across the season. The only character in the show's history who represents the end point of the path Morty is currently walking is Evil Morty. The show putting both of them in the same season, the Morty who is becoming something and the Morty who already became something, is either a confrontation or a mirror, possibly both. The Omega device is the variable that makes all of this dangerous in a concrete way. It has already been used once against Diane, and the effect was total and permanent. No version of Diane exists anywhere anymore because Rick Prime pressed a button. Evil Morty has has the plans for building another one. The obvious targets are either Rick, every version of Rick across the multiverse erased, or Morty himself, which would be a genuinely strange and specific kind of self-destruction. Every version of Morty gone because one version decided that was preferable to what they all were. The show has not confirmed which direction this goes. Nobody outside the production knows. What is confirmed is that Evil Morty is the designated central villain. The Omega device exists as an active threat. Morty is more capable than he has ever been, and the finale has Morty alone with a portal gun. Season 9 being described by Dan Harmon as very new and very alien is a phrase that lands differently when you look at all of that together. Very alien might mean the show is going somewhere it has genuinely never been. Given the map of where everything is positioned going into this season, the direction that qualifies as genuinely new territory is the one where the show stops being about Rick's journey and starts being about Morty's. Before we move on, if you're enjoying this analysis, please consider subscribing. It helps the channel tremendously. That shift, if it is happening, would not come from nowhere. Mr. Poopy Butthole is sitting in a facility somewhere, his atomic vibrations not matching any reality the scientists can identify. And what he knows about dimensions beyond the central finite curve might matter more to where this season goes than anyone has yet worked out. Section 3. Mr. Poopy Butthole, the friend who might not be a friend. In Season 2, there is an episode called Total Recall. The premise is simple and immediately terrifying. Alien parasites have gotten into the Smith household, and they reproduce by implanting fake memories. Every time someone remembers a good moment with a character, that character multiplies. The house fills up with people the family is convinced they have always known. A cowboy, a talking butler, a set of conjoined twins, and the only way to tell the real people from the parasites is to find a bad memory. The parasites can only create good ones. If someone cannot remember a single bad moment with a person, that person is probably not real. Beth cannot find a bad memory of Mr. Poopy Butthole. She shoots him. He is real. He gets rushed to the hospital. Beth spends subsequent episodes visibly broken by guilt over what she did to someone she genuinely cares about. And the show never fully resolves the question it raised in that moment. How did Mr. Poopy Butthole end up in a situation where he could not be distinguished from a parasite? Why are all his memories with the family positive? The answer the show gave at the time was essentially that some people just have genuinely warm relationships with no bad moments to speak of. That answer worked for several seasons. Then, the Season 8 finale happened. Mr. Poopy Butthole has appeared in every season finale since Season 2. Always in a post-credit scene, always breaking the fourth wall to talk directly to the audience. He comments on the season, mentions his personal life, says something funny, and ends by building anticipation for what comes next. This has been a tradition so consistent and so warm that it became one of the most reliable things about the show. No matter how dark or complicated or emotionally exhausting a season finale got, Mr. Poopy Butthole would show up afterward and make it feel like everything was going to be okay. The Season 8 version of that scene starts exactly the same way. He shows up. He talks about his favorite episode. He mentions the one where Jerry turned into an Easter bunny. Comfortable, familiar, classic. Then the camera pulls back. He is in a facility. Scientists in what appear to be research gear are monitoring him. And Amy, his wife, the woman he has been with across several seasons of post-credits appearances, the person whose life he has shared in these brief fourth-wall-breaking check-ins, has turned him in. She identified him as an imposter. The scientists run their equipment and confirm what Amy suspected. His atomic vibrations do not match anything in their reality. The specific word choice there is what the entire fandom has been pulling apart ever since. The scientists do not say his atoms do not match their universe. They say their reality. In the language of Rick and Morty, those two words mean different things. A universe is a single dimension within the multiverse. A reality might be something broader, a larger grouping, a different level of how existence is organized. The central finite curve, the structure that Evil Morty destroyed in Season 5, was described as a section of the multiverse specifically cordoned off to ensure Rick would always be the smartest being in any room within it. Everything inside the curve was one kind of reality. Everything outside it was something else. If Mr. Poopy Butthole's atomic vibrations do not match any reality the scientists can identify, the fan theory that has gained the most traction and the most logical support from the show's own established rules is that he comes from beyond the central finite curve, from outside the section of the multiverse that Evil Morty blew apart, from a place where Rick's dominance was never the organizing principle. This matters for several reasons that connect directly to where Season 9 appears to be heading. First, Rick's dead wife Diane. The Omega device was used by Rick Prime to erase every version of Diane from every reality. But if there are realities beyond the central finite curve, realities that operate by different rules, realities that the Omega device, as used by Rick Prime, might not have reached, then there is at least a theoretical possibility that a version of Diane exists somewhere outside the curve. Someone from beyond the curve would know this. Someone from beyond the curve might even have a connection to her. If Mr. Poopy Butthole is genuinely from that outside space, and if his long relationship with the Smith family has been building towards something, the shape of what that something might be starts to come into focus. Second, Mr. Poopy Butthole has never appeared in any of the show's flashback episodes. This detail has been noted repeatedly in fan analysis, and it is accurate. In Rickternal Friendshine of the Spotless Mort, which went deep into Rick's memories and his early friendship with Bird Person and Gearhead, Mr. Poopy Butthole does not appear. In the episodes that showed Memory Rick, the version of Rick constructed from Diane's memories of him, there is no mention of Mr. Poopy Butthole. He has been presented as a longtime family friend for the entire run of the show, and yet whenever the show goes back into the past, he simply is not there. The show has never explained this gap. Total Recall raised it first, indirectly. Beth could not find a bad memory. The alien parasites worked by implanting only good memories, and the absence of bad ones was the tell. But the episode confirmed Mr. Poopy Butthole was real by showing him bleed when shot, so the parasite theory was put to rest. The absence of bad memories was left as a quirk rather than a clue, except now there is a facility, and scientists, and Amy, and atomic vibrations that match nothing. Mr. Poopy Butthole's full name, revealed in the Season 7 premiere, How Poopy Got His Poop Back, is Wayne Poopy Butthole. He is voiced now by John Allen, who took over the role from Justin Roiland after Roiland's departure from the show. He has a son named Poopy Jr., who became estranged from him. He has a criminal record that the Galactic Federation once looked into and found clean, which is its own interesting detail given that being clean in a system Rick regularly operates against is not nothing. He exists in the show as someone Rick clearly trusts, or at least has trusted historically. There is a photo of Rick and Mr. Poopy Butthole together on the refrigerator in the Smith house, visible in Season 3's The ABCs of Beth. He also has an evil counterpart. Darth Poopy Butthole appeared in Never Ricking Morty, though that episode's relationship with canon is genuinely complicated. It takes place within a story being told within a story, and the show left the canonicity of what happens inside that frame unclear. Darth Poopy Butthole exists. Whether he connects to whatever is happening with the real Mr. Poopy Butthole in Season 9 is unknown. But the show established that a dark version of him exists, and the Season 8 finale established that the version the audience has been watching for 6 seasons might be operating under a hidden identity. The structure of the post-credits scenes is worth looking at separately. Since Season 2, Mr. Poopy Butthole has appeared at the end of every season finale to break the fourth wall. This happened in Season 2, Season 3, Season 4, though he did not appear at the end of Star Mort Rickturn of the Jerry, which was the Season 4 finale, making that the one exception. Season 5, Season 6, Season 7, and Season 8. The tradition has always been warm. He talks about his life. He builds excitement. He is the show's way of exhaling after a difficult finale and reminding the audience that there is more coming and it is worth waiting for. The Season 8 version of that tradition used the familiarity of the format as a trap. The audience expects a warm check-in. The show delivered a reveal that recontextualized every single one of those check-ins before it. If Mr. Poopy Butthole has been an imposter this entire time, or something other than what he presented himself as, then every appearance, every life update, every warm reassurance delivered directly to camera across multiple seasons of television was part of a performance. That is a long game, even by Rick and Morty standards. Dan Harmon's response to the fan theory about Mr. Poopy Butthole becoming a villain is worth examining carefully. In an interview following Season 7, when the theory was put to him directly, he joked about it first, saying now they could not do it because the theorists would claim credit, and then said he loves that kind of fan engagement and wants to encourage it. Scott Marder said more plainly that becoming a villain is not their plan for Mr. Poopy Butthole. That statement was made in early 2024, before Season 8 aired, before the post-credit scene that put him in a facility, before Amy turned him in. Plans change, or plans get revealed gradually, and what looked like a denial was actually accurate as a description of one stage of something larger. The show has done this before. The Rick Prime storyline was seeded across seasons in ways that were only fully visible in retrospect. What Season 9 has confirmed through the Reddit AMA with Scott Marder is that characters have arcs coming. The list Marder gave in all capital letters included Evil Morty and others, and the Mr. Poopy Butthole situation from Season 8 is the most visually prominent unresolved thread the show is carrying carrying into Season 9. An unresolved thread that deliberately set up in a finale post-credit scene does not get left alone for a full season. The Amy situation adds another layer. Amy glared at the scientists when they asked what she wanted done with her husband. The glare, not a spoken answer, ended the scene. The show did not give her a line because whatever she said would have narrowed the possibilities. The glare kept everything open. Amy is either furious at a husband she now knows is a fake, or she is something more than a betrayed wife, someone who has her own knowledge about what he is and what he came from. The show left both readings available. There is also the question of what Mr. Poopy Butthole was actually doing across all the seasons in which he appeared. The comic series Lil Poopy Superstar established that he comes from a dimension where he is a planet-wide superstar who chose to live with the Smiths to experience a normal life. That backstory from the comics gave him a reason to be there that was entirely benign. He wanted ordinary. He got it by living adjacent to the most extraordinary person in any given reality. But if he is from beyond the central finite curve, from outside the system Rick built his entire existence within, then the reason he chose the Smiths specifically, Rick specifically, takes on a different weight. You do not end up next to Rick Sanchez by accident. Rick does not let people into his orbit without a reason, even if that reason is one he has not fully examined. The photograph on the refrigerator means something. The trust, even guarded trust, means something. What it means is what Season 9 is positioned to start explaining. The facility he is sitting in. The scientists who cannot match his readings to anything they know. Amy's glare. The question of whether there are versions of people still existing beyond the curve that the Omega device never touched. These are not separate threads. They are the same thread, and Mr. Poopy Butthole is sitting at the center of it. Season 9 opens with an episode about Morty. Episode 5 is about Jerry. Episode 9 is about Summer at a camp. The season finale has Morty alone with a portal gun. Somewhere in between all of that, there is an episode that has to deal with what Amy said to those scientists. And whatever comes after that conversation is either the most important Mr. Poopy Butthole scene the show has ever done, or it is a misdirect so well constructed that the show would deserve credit for it either way. That question, villain, victim, or something the show has not named yet, is one half of the mystery Season 9 is carrying. The other half lives inside Rick himself, in the space left behind by a grief he is now sealed away and a wife he can never get back from any direction. Before we move on, if you're enjoying this analysis, please consider subscribing. It helps the channel tremendously. How Rick functions without the thing that defined him, and what he reaches for when the anger and the purpose are finally gone, is where everything heads next. Section 4. Rick without a reason. What happens when the mission is over? There is a specific kind of person who builds their entire life around one goal. Everything they do, every choice they make, every relationship they keep or destroy gets filtered through that single thing they are working toward. The goal becomes the reason they get up, the reason they drink, the reason they push people away, the reason they keep going when nothing else would be enough to make them. And then one day, the goal is achieved. The thing they worked for is done. And the person who was held together entirely by that purpose has to figure out what is left. Rick Sanchez killed Rick Prime in Season 7. He spent somewhere between 20 and 30 years, the show has never given an exact number, but the weight of it has been consistent across every season, working toward that moment. Rick Prime murdered Diane, showed up in Rick's garage, opened a portal, dropped a bomb, and left. Baby Beth survived. Diane did not. Rick C-137 spent the rest of his life building toward the day he could find Rick Prime and end him. Every invention, every adventure, every season of the show existed in the shadow of that unfinished thing. Season 7's Unmortrican gave Rick what he had been working for. Rick Prime is dead, gone. And the show did something honest in how it handled that moment. It did not play it as a triumph. Rick got what he wanted, and the episode made clear that getting what you want, when what you want is revenge, does not fill the space the way the wanting did. The mission being over does not make the grief smaller. If anything, without the mission to hold on to, the grief becomes the only thing left in the room. Season 8 then did something with this that was quieter and more emotionally precise than anything the show had done with Rick in years. The season spent significant time on Rick's relationship with Beth, his daughter, the person who grew up without him, the person whose life was shaped by an absence he created, and on the Memory Rick storyline, which dealt directly with Diane. Memory Rick is a version of Rick constructed from Diane's memories of who Rick was before everything happened. He is not the real Rick. He is a memory of a man that no longer exists, filtered through the love of a woman who is also gone. And Rick C-137 had to reckon with that. The Season 8 finale finale, Hot Rick, ended with Rick sealing away a memory of Diane, actively choosing to close a door on something he had been carrying for decades. The show framed this as a form of moving forward, not forgetting, not healing in a clean or comfortable way, but making a deliberate choice to stop living inside the loss. This is the emotional starting point for Season 9. Rick Sanchez, for the first time in the show's entire run, is not defined by what he is chasing or what he is grieving. Scott Marder used the phrase constructive direction when describing where Rick is headed in Season 9. That phrase is small and careful, and it is doing a lot of work. Constructive is the opposite of what Rick has been operating as for the better part of a decade of television. Rick's intelligence has been almost entirely destructive, used to survive, to fight, to dismantle, to run, to avoid. Even the moments of genuine warmth he has shown toward Morty or Beth have been surrounded by behavior that undermines those moments, that pulls back, that creates distance whenever things get too close to real. Constructive implies something different, something that builds rather than burns. Dan Harmon describes Season 9 as very new and very alien. Both of those words are worth sitting with individually. Very new is a statement about departure, the show moving away from something it has been doing. Very alien is stranger. Alien, in the context of a show about space travel and dimension hopping, is not a word that means much on its own. But in the context of what the show has been doing with Rick's emotional life across Seasons 7 and 8, very alien might mean something more personal. The version of Rick that exists in Season 9, without the revenge mission, without the grief as an active wound, without Rick Prime as a defined enemy, might be genuinely unrecognizable to himself. That disorientation, that not knowing who you are when the thing that defined you is finished, is its own kind of alien experience. Adult Swim president Michael Ouline said the season features some of the best character writing ever done on the show. He said this specifically in the context of Season 9's promotional campaign, and he framed it as something he believed rather than just something he was required to say. The best character writing ever done on a show that is already in its 9th season is a meaningful claim. It implies that whatever the writers are doing with Rick in this new phase of his life is not retreating to old patterns. The show has enough history with itself to know what retreating to old patterns looks like. Season 4 was criticized by some fans for feeling like it was running in place, more interested in being clever than in moving anything forward. The language around Season 9 does not sound like a show running in place. What actually happened to Rick across Season 8 is worth laying out clearly because it sets up everything Season 9 is inheriting. Beth, both versions of her, the Earth Beth who grew up in the house and Space Beth who was cloned and sent away, became the emotional center of Season 8 in a way that surprised a lot of viewers. Valkyrie, the Curixus case of Benjamin Button, and Hot Rick all put Rick and Beth's relationship at the front of the story. The show examined what it means for a daughter to have a father who abandoned her, came back, and is now trying to exist in her life without ever fully explaining or apologizing for what his absence cost her. Beth, across Season 8, was shown getting harder, more ruthless, more willing to do things the show previously would have reserved for Rick or for antagonists. The fan term for what fans were seeing develop, Evil Beth, a version of Beth who fully embraces the darker capabilities she inherited from her father, became one of the most discussed possibilities going into Season 9. The show has already given the audience Evil Morty and an evil version of Jerry, who appeared in Season 8. The only major Smith family member who has not had an evil variant shown on screen is Beth. Both of them, Earth Beth and Space Beth, were shown doing violent and ruthless things across Season 8 in ways the show seemed aware it was building towards something. The Beths were not confirmed as villains. The show was doing something subtler, showing the conditions that produce a darker version of a character, and then leaving the audience waiting to see if those conditions complete their work. Rick's relationship with Space Beth added another dimension to this. Space Beth is either a clone of Beth or the original, and Rick deliberately made it so he could never know which one. That decision, choosing not to know, choosing to love both of them without being able to distinguish them, is one of the most emotionally significant things Rick has done across the show's run. A man who builds his identity around knowing everything, who is the smartest being in any room, who cannot function when he is not in control, chose ignorance because the alternative was choosing between his daughter and a copy of his daughter. He could not do it. The show did not present this as weakness. It presented it as the closest thing to grace Rick Sanchez is capable of. Season 9 carries all of that into a new phase. Rick without a revenge mission. Rick who has sealed away a memory of Diane. Rick whose daughter is becoming something harder and more dangerous. Rick whose grandson is more capable than any previous version of Morty the audience has seen. Rick who, according to Scott Marder's Reddit AMA confirmation, is heading somewhere constructive.
The question is what constructive looks like for a person like Rick. For most people, constructive means building relationships, finding purpose, contributing something. For Rick, constructive has to be filtered through who he actually is. A genius who is also an alcoholic, who is also genuinely lonely, who is also capable of extraordinary cruelty and extraordinary tenderness, sometimes in the same episode. Constructive for Rick is not going to look the way it would look for someone healthier. The show has never pretended Rick is getting better in a clean or linear way. What it has done, across seasons 7 and 8, is show Rick moving. Not healed, moving. That is different. The first look images released by Adult Swim for season 9 gave specific visual information that lands differently now. One image shows Rick restraining Morty by his neck, described in coverage as a classic affair, the familiar dynamic. Another shows a drunken Rick towering over desperate villagers. A third shows a tender moment between Rick and Morty sitting by a fire together. A fourth shows Rick in full action mode. And there is an image of what appears to be a creepy figure walking out of an RV, which nobody has been able to fully identify yet. The tender moment by the fire is the one that stands out. Rick and Morty sitting together quietly by firelight is not the image of a show retreating to chaos for its own sake. That image, if it comes from a real episode rather than from a promotional scenario created specifically for the marketing, suggests that season 9 is going to spend real time on the relationship between Rick and Morty in a way that is not mediated by a mission or a villain or a crisis. Just the two of them. What they actually are to each other when there is nothing to run from or fight. That is new territory for the show. Every season of Rick and Morty has had a shape imposed on it by external pressure. Rick Prime, the Citadel, the Federation, the Vindicators, whatever threat or challenge was driving the plot forward. Season 9 appears to be operating from an internal pressure instead. Who are these people without the external thing pushing them? What do they want when nobody is chasing them? What does Rick reach for when grief and revenge have been set aside, and he has to live in the ordinary passing of time like everyone else does? Martyr's statement that season 9 will contain an episode dealing with false reality in a totally different way from season 7's Fear No Mort is another signal pointing in this direction. Fear No Mort was an episode about Rick confronting a simulation of his worst fears, specifically his fear of losing Morty. The show used a false reality to make Rick face something true about himself. If season 9 does something similar but in a totally different way, the most logical version of that different approach involves the new emotional territory Rick is standing in. Not fear of loss, something that comes after loss, something that comes after the mission ends. The precogs, introduced in season 8's Morty Daddy, are another loose thread pointed directly at this. 3 alien chefs who can see and perceive the future with total accuracy. Rick got annoyed by them and threw them into his garbage dimension. Characters who know what is going to happen to everyone, discarded by Rick because knowing the future made him uncomfortable, now with reason to be angry at him. A villain who knows the future is a very specific kind of threat to a character who usually survives by being smarter and faster than whatever he is facing. The precogs do not need to be faster. They already know what Rick will do. That threat, something Rick cannot outthink because it already knows his thoughts, aimed at a version of Rick who is trying to figure out how to exist without the mission that held him together for 30 years, is the kind of setup the show does when it is operating at its best. Not a villain who is just more powerful. A villain whose power specifically targets the thing Rick is most vulnerable to in this particular moment of his life. Whatever season 9 does with Rick's constructive direction, it is doing it in a world where Evil Morty has a weapon of mass destruction, where Mr. Poopy Butthole is in a facility with unexplained readings, where both versions of Beth are getting harder, and where Rick's grandson is quietly becoming someone capable of operating without him. None of that is background noise. All of it points somewhere. And the place the finale storyboards point, Morty alone, portal gun in hand, no Rick visible anywhere in the frame, suggests that wherever season 9 takes Rick on his constructive new path, it takes Morty somewhere completely separate. Before we move on, if you're enjoying this analysis, please consider subscribing. It helps the channel tremendously. What that separate place looks like, and what it means for the Beth who might be turning into something the show has been building towards since season 8, is exactly what comes next. Section 5. The Beth Problem. How the show built an evil version without saying so. There is a moment in season 8 where Beth does something that, in any earlier season of the show, would have been attributed to Rick. The specific action is violent, deliberate, carried out without hesitation, and without the kind of moral hand-wringing that Beth,
Beth, in earlier seasons, would have brought to a situation like that. The show does not comment on it directly. No character points at Beth and says, "Look at what she is becoming." The moment lands, and the episode moves forward, and the audience is left to sit with what they just watched and decide what it means. That is how the show has been building the Beth situation across Season 8, not through announcements, through accumulation.
Beth Smith has always been the most complicated member of the Smith family, in ways that the show underplayed for a long time. She is a horse surgeon, a cardiac surgeon for horses specifically, which is a job that requires genuine intelligence and skill, but exists at an odd angle to what someone with her capabilities might have done if her life had gone differently. She married Jerry, who the show has spent 9 seasons establishing as deeply insecure, often incompetent, and frequently aware of both things about himself without being able to change them. Beth stayed. She had children. She built a life that the show has consistently suggested sits slightly below what she was actually capable of. Her father is Rick Sanchez, the smartest being in any room he enters, at least within the central finite curve. A man who spent decades away from his daughter and came back without a full explanation of why or where he had been. Beth's relationship with Rick across the early seasons of the show was built on a specific and recognizable dynamic. The child desperate for a parent's approval, the parent incapable of giving it cleanly, both of them dancing around the real conversation they need to have because having it would require an honesty neither of them is ready for. Season 8 moved past that dance. The Curixus case of Benjamin Button, which is a play on the film The Curious Case of Benjamin Button, put Earth Beth and Space Beth together in a story about regression and change. The official synopsis described Beth and Space Beth staying behind while Rick and the others went to a theme park, and what happened between the two versions of the same woman was built around the specific tension that has defined their dynamic since Space Beth was introduced. Which one is the real Beth? Which one is the clone? Rick chose not to know, and that choice, generous and also maddening, means both Beths live in permanent uncertainty about their own identity. That uncertainty is not abstract. For Beth, both versions of her, the question of which one is real connects directly to every choice she has made since the split. If she is the clone, then every relationship she has, every memory she has, every version of herself she has built since Rick sent one of them into space is built on something that was manufactured rather than lived. The show has not resolved this because resolving it would collapse the tension. But across Season 8, the tension stopped being the interesting part. The interesting part became what both Beths are doing with it. Space Beth has been in space, operating without the domestic structure of the Smith household, making choices with consequences that extend further than suburban life allows. The show has shown her getting harder across her appearances since Season 4, and Season 8 leaned into this more directly than any previous season. Valkyric put her back alongside Rick in a way that highlighted the similarities between them, the capability, the ruthlessness, the willingness to do what is necessary without waiting for permission or consensus. Earthbeth, meanwhile, has been doing something quieter and in some ways more unsettling. The violence she was shown capable of in Season 8 was not Spacebeth's violence, the wide-open, consequence-free violence of someone operating in space without rules. Earthbeth's violence happened in the context of ordinary life, inside the structures she built, around people she loves. That specificity is what makes it land differently. The fandom term for what both versions of Beth appear to be heading toward is Evil Beth. The show has already given the audience Evil Morty, who represents what a Morty becomes when pushed too far by a Rick. The show gave the audience an evil version of Jerry in Season 8, a version of the most hapless member of the Smith family turned into something genuinely threatening. Summer has her own darkness, described by the show itself as angsty in ways that occasionally tip into something more serious, as seen in Summer of All Fear from Season 8, where she was described in coverage as being more like Elon Musk than her loving teenage self in how she operated. The only major Smith family member who has never had an evil variant shown clearly on screen is Beth. The show has gone through the entire family except her. Evil Morty exists and is confirmed as the show's central villain going forward. Evil Jerry appeared and demonstrated what the show can do when it decides to take a joke character seriously. Summer's darkness has been explored. Rick's darkness is the engine the show runs on. Beth is the gap. In Season 8 spent 10 episodes filling in the conditions that produce whatever comes next. The specific thing that makes Beth more complicated than the other potential evil variants is her relationship with her own intelligence. Beth is genuinely smart. The show established this early and has maintained it. She is not smart in the way Rick is smart. The show has never suggested she operates at his level, but she is capable, analytical, and when the situation requires it, strategically cold in ways that her early season characterization kept contained. Season 8 let those qualities
qualities out more fully. And the result was a version of Beth that felt less like a supporting character and more like someone the show was watching carefully. Her relationship with Rick in Season 8 also shifted in a specific way. Earlier seasons often had Beth wanting Rick's approval, waiting for him to acknowledge her,
existing in a slightly diminished position relative to her father's enormous presence. Season 8 Beth was not waiting. She was moving, making choices, operating alongside Rick rather than in his shadow, and occasionally doing things Rick would have done but chose not to, which is its own kind of signal. The show confirmed through Scott Marder's Reddit AMA that characters across the upcoming seasons have arcs. The list he confirmed in all capitals included Evil Morty, Jessica, Squanchy, Bird Person, and Bird Daughter. Beth was not on that specific list by name, but the setup across Season 8 is too deliberate and too consistent to be accidental. The show does not spend an entire season gradually darkening a character across multiple episodes without a direction in mind. That is not how Dan Harmon structures a season. His approach to storytelling, documented across his work on Community as well as Rick and Morty, is built around the idea that character behavior in the present is always setting up something in the future. Nothing is random texture. Space Beth, returning in Season 9, is confirmed by the official trailer. The trailer showed both versions of Beth, Space Beth and Earth Beth, having breakfast together, which sounds domestic and small and is actually a significant image given what the Season 8 finale left the audience with. Two versions of the same woman, both of whom have been moving in a harder direction, sitting across from each other in an ordinary setting. The show tends to use ordinary settings for its most emotionally loaded conversations. The trailer description from Screen Rant confirmed that Space Beth rejoins the family in Season 9, which means whatever she has been doing in space between Season 8 and Season 9 is done, at least temporarily, and she is back in the structure of the Smith household. That return, a character who has been operating with total freedom coming back into a confined domestic space, creates pressure in a specific direction. Space Beth without constraints is one kind of character. Space Beth sitting at a breakfast table with Earth Beth, both of them carrying everything Season 8 did to them, is a different situation entirely. The episode Eraserhead is worth examining in this context. The title is a direct reference to Eraserhead, the David Lynch film from 1977. Eraserhead is a film about a man overwhelmed by domestic life, specifically by the arrival of a child, by the responsibilities of family, by the noise and demand and inescapability of being connected to other people. The film is surreal and deeply uncomfortable and built around the feeling of being trapped by the ordinary. The Rick and Morty episode that borrows that title is airing on June 28, which puts it at episode 6 of 10, squarely in the middle of the season, at the point where the show typically places its most structurally important episodes. What an episode called Eraserhead is actually about is unknown, but the source material it references is specifically about a man being crushed by the weight of family obligation and domestic life. Given that Rick is operating in Season 9 without his revenge mission, and is now, theoretically, more present in his family's life than he has ever been, the Eraserhead reference points somewhere particular. Requiem Morta Dream, Episode 8, references Requiem for a Dream, Darren Aronofsky's film about addiction and the destruction it causes across multiple people's lives simultaneously. The film does not have a single protagonist. It follows several characters as their various addictions consume them, and the structure of the film is built around parallel deterioration. Rick's alcoholism is not a joke in the show. It has never been only a joke. It is a coping mechanism, a shield, a way of being simultaneously present and absent. An episode that references Requiem for a Dream in a season where Rick is supposedly heading in a constructive new direction is either a dark chapter in that constructive journey or evidence that the constructive direction has a crisis point embedded in it. Both of those film references, Eraserhead and Requiem for a Dream, point at Beth's situation as much as they point at Rick's. A woman trapped by domestic life, the people around her being consumed by something. Beth, across Season 8, was shown in a situation where both of those things were true around her, and her response was not to collapse under the weight, but to get harder. The show has also established, across 8 seasons, that Beth and Rick are similar in ways that neither of them is entirely comfortable with. The intelligence, the coldness under pressure, the capability for ruthlessness, the difficulty with ordinary emotional honesty. Rick has spent seasons watching himself in Morty, seeing his own tendencies reflected in his grandson, and being troubled by what that reflection shows. The same dynamic exists with Beth, but the show has explored it less fully. Beth is Rick's actual child. The biological and emotional inheritance runs deeper. Whatever Rick has been becoming across Seasons 7 and
Season 8, Beth has been inheriting in real time. Season 9 is the season where that inheritance either gets acknowledged directly or gets weaponized. The show is too deliberate in how it has laid this out to leave it as background material. The trailer confirmed that the season features an intense new villain that Rick and Morty face together. The identity of that villain has not been revealed through any official source. The obvious candidates, Evil Morty, the Precogs, a resurgent Citadel, something from beyond the central finite curve, are all possibilities. But the show's pattern, established across 9 seasons, is that the most interesting threats are not external. They come from within the structure of the show itself. Evil Morty came from the Morty population the show built. Rick Prime came from Rick's own history. The Citadel was built by Rick's. If the most interesting threat in Season 9 follows that same internal logic, the place the show has been most carefully preparing across Season 8 is Beth. Not as a cartoon villain with a clear agenda, as a person who has been changed by specific experiences in specific ways and who is now operating in a world where the father who shaped those changes is trying to be something different for the first time in decades. What that collision produces is genuinely unknown. What the show has built, piece by piece, across Season 8 and now across the episode titles and trailer material confirmed for Season 9, suggests it produces something the show has been building toward since Beth first looked at Mr. Poopy Butthole and could not find a single bad memory. Before we move on, if you're enjoying this analysis, please consider subscribing. It helps the channel tremendously. Jerry, the person who has always been at the edges of this family's darkness, apparently has some really memorable moments coming in Season 9. What a man like Jerry does when everyone around him is becoming something harder and more dangerous is its own question entirely. And Bud, the episode that appears to be built around him, suggests the show is ready to take that question seriously for the first time. Section 6. Jerry, Summer, and the episodes nobody saw coming. There is a running joke in Rick and Morty that has lasted 9 seasons. Jerry Smith is useless. Jerry Smith is the punchline. Jerry Smith is the man in the room that everyone, his wife, his children, his father-in-law, the aliens, the robots, the interdimensional governments, has assessed as the weakest person present and acted accordingly. The show built this so thoroughly and so consistently that Jerry became a shorthand for a specific kind of failure. Not dramatic failure, ordinary failure. The failure of a person who wanted more from life than life was willing to give them, and who kept showing up anyway without the tools to change anything. And then Season 8 turned Jerry into the Easter Bunny. That specific episode, which Mr. Poopy Butthole himself mentioned in the Season 8 post-credits scene as his favorite of the season, is exactly the kind of Jerry episode the show has always been capable of and has occasionally delivered. Jerry, through circumstances entirely outside his control, ends up as something he did not choose, in a situation that does not fit him, surrounded by reactions he cannot predict. The show mines that situation for comedy, and then, almost always, leaves Jerry slightly more aware of his own position than he was before. Slightly more. Never enough to fundamentally change anything. Season 9 has a Jerry episode called Jer Bud. The title is a direct pun on Air Bud, the 1997 film about a golden retriever who discovers he can play basketball at a competitive level. The film is built on a specific premise. A creature that nobody took seriously turns out to be genuinely capable in a domain that matters. Nobody expected the dog to be able to play basketball. The dog plays basketball. The world has to adjust. Applying that structure to Jerry is not a subtle choice. Scott Martyr confirmed in the Reddit AMA that Jerry has some really memorable moments coming in Season 9, and the word memorable is doing specific work there. Jerry has had funny moments across the entire run of the show. Funny is not the same as memorable. Memorable implies something that changes how the audience sees a character, or how the character sees themselves, or both. The Air Bud reference in the episode title suggests that Jer Bud is built around Jerry being capable of something in a context where nobody around him expected capability. What that domain is, what Jerry's version of basketball turns out to be, is unknown. But the architecture of the reference is clear. The show has experimented with Jerry before in ways that briefly suggested he could be more than the punchline. Season 2's Morty Night run gave him a solo storyline at an alien day spa that ended up being one of the more quietly funny and emotionally coherent Jerry plots the show has produced. Season 3's The Whirly-Durly Conspiracy put Jerry and Rick together without the buffer of the rest of the family, and showed a dynamic between them that was more complicated than the simple contempt the show usually plays for laughs. Rick, in that episode, told Jerry something true and cruel about Beth that the show let land with full weight. Jerry walked away from that conversation changed, changed in a small way. The show acknowledged that Jerry, even Jerry, can be damaged by honesty. Season 8 showed an evil version of Jerry. This is confirmed, and it aired. An evil variant of the man the show has spent 8 seasons treating as its primary example of harmless inadequacy turned out to be threatening in ways the original Jerry is not. The show did not dwell on this. It was not the center of Season 8, but it was there, and it followed the same logic that produced Evil Morty and that appears to be producing a darker version of Beth. Every member of the Smith family has a version of themselves that the show has now revealed or is building toward. Jerry's evil version was shown. The question for Season 9 is whether the original Jerry gets to be something other than the inverse of that, something other than useless, without having to be evil to get there. Jairbud airing as Episode 5, right in the middle of the season's first half, gives it a structural position that is neither throwaway nor climactic. Episode 5 is where the show tends to place episodes that are important to how the season breathes. Not the big reveals, not the openers that set up the premise, but the episodes that give the audience a chance to spend time with something specific before the season shifts into its heavier second half. In Episode 5, Jerry episode that Scott Marder describes as memorable, is a show that has decided Jerry deserves that real estate. Now summer. Episode 9 is called Salute Your Morts, a direct reference to Salute Your Shorts, which was a Nickelodeon show from the early 90s set at a summer camp. The show was beloved by the generation that grew up watching it. It ran from 1991 to 1992 and starred a group of misfit kids at Camp Anawana dealing with a strict counselor named Kevin Ugg Lee. It was funny and slightly anarchic in the way that only 90s children's television managed to be, built around kids outsmarting adults and getting away with things, and forming the kind of friendships that only happen when people are stuck somewhere together. Spencer Grammer, who voices Summer, appeared in promotional material for Season 9 dressed as Kevin Ugg Lee, the camp counselor from Salute Your Shorts. This is confirmed. Adult Swim released the image. The voice actors for Summer, in costume, as the specific character the episode title references. Episode 9 is a summer episode, and it is set at a camp, and the Salute Your Shorts structure, kids, authority figures, a contained environment where everyone is stuck together, is the frame the episode is working within. Summer's trajectory across the show has been one of the most inconsistently developed among the main cast, and the show has acknowledged this in how it uses her. Summer started as a more conventional teenager, concerned with social status, occasionally embarrassed by her family, slowly drawn into the adventures as the seasons progressed. Season 6 gave her some of the show's more action-oriented material. Season 7 continued that. Season 8's Summer of All Fear, which put her in a situation where she was described in coverage as operating more like Elon Musk than her loving teenage self, pushed her further into a mode that the show seemed interested in exploring, but has not yet fully committed to. The Salute Your Shorts reference for Summer's Season 9 episode is interesting because of what the source material is built around. The kids at Camp Anawana are not the authority. They are working within and against a system that someone else controls. The counselor is the power. The fun comes from watching people with less power find ways to operate anyway, to claim space, to refuse to be defined entirely by the position they have been placed in. Summer, across the show's run, has been operating within a family structure where the power clearly belongs to Rick, and where her own intelligence and capability have occasionally been allowed to surface, but have never been given the kind of sustained focus that Morty has received. An Episode 9 summer episode that specifically references a show about young people refusing to be contained by the authority structure around them, and that puts Spencer Grammer in the costume of the authority figure rather than the kid, is pointing at something about where Summer is in her arc. She is not the kid at camp anymore. The costume is the tell. She is in the position of authority. What that means inside a Rick and Morty episode, in a season where every member of the Smith family is being pushed into new territory, is genuinely open. Going back to the Reddit AMA with Scott Marder, the confirmation that Jessica has an arc coming in Season 9 is worth more attention than it has received in most coverage of the season. Jessica is Morty's longtime crush, the girl from his school who has existed on the edges of the show since Season 1, showing up periodically, occasionally involved in a plot, but never given the kind of sustained character development that would make her a fully realized presence. Season 4's One Crew Over the Crew-Coo's Morty gave her a brief but notable moment. Season 7 developed her slightly further. Marder confirming she has an arc in the upcoming seasons, in all capitals, means the show is finally ready to do something with a character it has been keeping in reserve for 9 years. Why Jessica matters to where Season 9 is heading comes back to Morty. The premiere is called There's Something About Morty, a pun on the 1998 film There's Something About Mary, which is a movie about a woman that multiple men become obsessed with and pursue across the film's entire runtime. The original film is about obsession, about the way people build entire versions of someone in their heads that have little to do with who that person actually is. Applying that structure to Morty, the person everyone in the film's equivalent is chasing, rather than to the person being chased, is a reversal of the source material's premise. Morty is the Mary of this situation. Something about him is drawing attention, creating obsession, making him the center of something larger than himself. Jessica has been the object of Morty's attention since season 1. If the premiere reverses that dynamic, if season 9 begins with something about Morty being the thing that draws attention, and if Jessica is confirmed to have an arc in the upcoming seasons, the shape of that reversal is pointed directly at the relationship the show has been developing, slowly and inconsistently since its first episode. Bird Person and Bird Daughter are also confirmed by Martyr's Reddit AMA as having arcs coming. Bird Person is Rick's oldest and most significant friendship in the show's history. The two of them fought together in a rebellion against the Galactic Federation, and Bird Person's death at his own wedding in the season 2 finale was one of the show's most genuinely devastating moments. His resurrection as Phoenix Person, a weapon built from his body by the Galactic Federation, and his eventual return to himself across seasons 6 and 7 gave him one of the show's longest and most carefully developed arcs. Bird Daughter, Morty's daughter with Tammy, making her both Bird Person's granddaughter and a genuinely complicated figure in the family tree of the show, appeared in season 8's Morty Daddy, where Morty tried to reconnect with her. Squanchy, Rick's other old friend from the Rebellion days, is also confirmed as having an arc coming. Squanchy has been a recurring but underused presence across the show's run. Present at Bird Person's wedding in season 2, briefly seen in other appearances, but never given the kind of sustained development that Bird Person received. His confirmation alongside Bird Person suggests that the Rebellion era of Rick's past, the period before the show begins, when Rick was fighting the Galactic Federation alongside people he genuinely cared about, is going to be relevant to season 9 in some way. The full picture of season 9's confirmed character landscape is worth stepping back to look at as a complete image. Rick without his revenge mission and heading in a constructive direction. Morty more capable than he has ever been, with a premiere built around something specific about him drawing attention. Beth and Space Beth, both harder and more capable of violence, with Space Beth confirmed returning to the family structure. Jerry, with a memorable episode built around a premise of unexpected capability. Summer in a position of authority in a camp setting. Jessica with an actual arc. Bird Person, Bird Daughter, and Squanchy all having arcs in upcoming seasons. Evil Morty confirmed as the central villain. Mr. Poopy Butthole in a facility with unidentifiable readings. This is not a season that is resting. Every major character in the show's history, and several recurring ones, are being moved into new positions simultaneously. The season that does this, that repositions its entire cast at once, is usually the season that is setting up something the show plans to sustain across multiple seasons. Given that seasons 10 and 11 are already in production and writing, respectively, season 9 is building a foundation. Portal colors have meaning. Martyr said this in the Reddit AMA and gave no further explanation. The show has used different colored portals across its run. Green is the standard color for Rick's portal gun, but other colors have appeared in specific contexts that the fandom has analyzed extensively without official confirmation. Martyr confirming that the colors carry meaning is the show officially acknowledging that something the audience noticed but was never confirmed is real. Season 9 is apparently the season where that meaning becomes relevant. A show that is confirming hidden meaning in a visual detail it has been using since season 1, while simultaneously repositioning every major character and heading toward a finale where Morty is alone with a portal gun, is a show that has been building toward a specific moment for a very long time. The colors of the portals in that finale, what color appears when Morty uses the gun alone, whether it matches Rick's green or something else entirely, might be the quietest and most significant visual detail the season delivers. Before we move on, if you're enjoying this analysis, please consider subscribing. It helps the channel tremendously. Which brings everything back to what the show has been quietly building in its animation choices, its visual grammar, the things it communicates through images rather than dialogue. And season 9 being the first season produced entirely without the studio that drew every frame of the show for its first 6 years. Section 7. The new studio, the new look, and what changes when the artists change. Every frame of Rick and Morty from season 1 through season 6 was drawn by Bardell Entertainment. Every single one. The pilot episode from December 2013, the first time audiences saw Rick's garage and Morty's nervous face and the green flash of a portal opening, Bardell drew that. Pickle Rick, the sequence where Rick engineers his way through a sewer using rat parts and cockroach legs, the most technically
extremely impressive piece of action animation the show had produced to that point. Bartle drew that. The Citadel episodes, which required animating hundreds of Rick and Morty variants simultaneously in crowd sequences that would challenge any animation studio. Bartle drew that too. The wedding scene at the end of Season 2, where Bird Person dies. The destruction of the Citadel in Season 5. The moment in Season 6 where Rick confronts the consequences of everything he set in motion. All of it, across 6 complete seasons of television, came from one studio operating out of Vancouver, Canada. Bartle Entertainment was not just a vendor the show hired to complete work. They were the visual identity of Rick and Morty for its first decade. The specific way the show looks, the slightly loose quality of the character movement, the way expressions push into exaggeration without losing the underlying emotion, the particular texture of the backgrounds, the color choices that make Bikini Bottom feel different from alien planets, feel different from the Citadel, feel different from the Smith family kitchen. All of that was developed and maintained by Bartle across 6 seasons of production. Lighthouse Studios, based in Kilkenny, Ireland, joined for seasons 7 and 8 and handled a portion of the episodes during that period. But Bartle was always part of the picture until now. Season 9 is the first season in the show's entire history with no Bartle involvement at all. Mercury Filmworks, based in Ottawa, Canada, is the new primary animation studio. Lighthouse Studios continues. The announcement of Mercury Filmworks' involvement came on March 11, 2026, the same day Adult Swim announced the Season 9 premiere date, and Mercury Filmworks themselves confirmed their role publicly at that time. This is not a rumor or a fan observation. Both studios have officially announced their participation. Mercury Filmworks is not an unknown studio. They have produced animation for a range of projects across their history, and are considered a legitimate and capable operation in the North American animation industry. The question is not whether they are good at making animation. The question is, what happens to the visual identity of a show that has been drawn by the same studio for 11 years when that studio is replaced entirely? Animation studios develop what professionals in the industry call a house style, a way of moving characters that becomes consistent enough across years of work that audiences absorb it without noticing. The timing of a joke in animation is not just in the writing. It lives in how many frames the animator uses to get from expression A to expression B, how long a character holds a reaction before the scene cuts, how much the character's body moves during dialogue. These are choices that a studio makes, refines, and maintains across the life of a production. Bartle made those choices for Rick and Morty for 6 seasons, and then partially for 2 more. Their version of those choices became what Rick and Morty looks like in motion. Mercury Filmworks will make their own version of those choices. The show's character designs, the basic visual appearance of Rick and Morty and the Smith family, the color palette, the overall structure of how the show presents itself, none of that changes. What changes is the invisible layer underneath all of that. The specific way a Rick and Morty episode feels in motion, the timing, the weight of a held expression, the rhythm of a joke landing. Adult Swim's official Season 9 description drew attention to the human element of the production in a way that most network press releases do not. The line about grade A organic slop made by real humans with real human traits like back hair and cysts was funny and pointed at the same time. In the current moment in animation, where conversations about artificial intelligence replacing human labor are happening at every level of the industry, a network specifically and loudly crediting human beings for making their show is a statement. The choice to make that statement in the context of a season where the longtime animation studio was replaced entirely adds a layer to what the statement is doing. Mercury Filmworks and Lighthouse Studios are the human beings now making Rick and Morty frame by frame. The show is crediting that labor explicitly. The first visual material from Season 9 came in stages across early 2026. On February 4th, 2026, Adult Swim uploaded a sneak peek animatic. An animatic is an early version of animation, usually rougher, used to work out timing and composition before the full animation is completed, to both the Adult Swim YouTube channel and the official Rick and Morty YouTube channel. An animatic gives a specific kind of visual information. It shows the structure of a scene without the full finished quality of the final product, which means it reveals the bones of how the new studio is thinking about movement and composition before the polish is applied. On March 5th, 2026, Adult Swim uploaded a promotional short created by Paul Robertson entitled Rick and Morty Megasphere. Paul Robertson is a pixel art animator known for his extremely dense and detailed work, and the Megasphere short was a standalone piece rather than a clip from the actual season. Its primary purpose was to confirm confirmed that Season 9 would air in 2026, which it did, but it also introduced a specific visual energy into the Season 9 promotional campaign. Chaotic, dense, referential, operating at a pace that rewards close attention. The official trailer for Season 9, released on April 7, 2026 by Adult Swim on their YouTube channel and the official Rick and Morty channel, gave the fullest picture of what the new studio's work looks like in motion. The trailer featured Billy Idol's Rebel Yell as its soundtrack, which is its own choice worth noting. Rebel Yell is a song from 1983 about wanting more, about desire that cannot be satisfied, about someone who gives everything they have and it still is not enough. Using that song over a Season 9 trailer for a show that is explicitly described as heading somewhere new and constructive is a tonal statement. The first look images released by Adult Swim alongside the premiere date announcement gave 8 specific images from the season. Rick restraining Morty by the neck, described in coverage as a classic Rick and Morty image, familiar and recognizable. A drunken Rick, towering above desperate villagers. A creepy figure walking out of an RV in the dark. Morty, shocked as he opens a door. A tender moment of Rick and Morty sitting by a fire together. Rick in full action mode. A giant Rick causing destruction. Rick operating covertly. 8 images covering the range of what Season 9 apparently contains. Violence, tenderness, mystery, chaos, and a quiet moment between the 2 central characters that the show does not always allow itself. The tender fireside image is the one that stands out most in the context of the studio change. A quiet, intimate moment between Rick and Morty, lit by firelight, requires a specific kind of animation to work. Quietness in animation is harder than action. Action has movement to carry it. Something is always happening in the frame. Something to draw the eye and communicate energy. A quiet scene between 2 characters sitting still has to do all of its work through facial expression, through posture, through the small movements that convey emotion without dialogue doing the heavy lifting. This is where the difference between studios becomes most visible. The Bardell version of a quiet Rick and Morty moment had a specific quality developed across years of doing exactly that kind of scene. The Mercury Filmworks version of the same kind of scene will have its own quality, and Season 9 is the first time the audience will see what that looks like. The storyboards released by Adult Swim for each episode give another layer of visual information about how Season 9 is being constructed. Storyboards are the planning stage of animation, drawn panels that work out the composition and camera angles of each scene before the full animation begins. The storyboards for the season finale, Field of Dreams, showed Morty roaming alone with a portal gun, which is confirmed visual information from official Adult Swim promotional material. Storyboards do not show finished animation, but they show intention. The composition of a scene, where the camera is, what it is looking at, how the characters are positioned in the frame, tells you what the people making the show wanted the audience to feel in that moment. Morty alone, in the finale storyboards, positioned as the subject of the shot rather than a figure reacting to what Rick is doing, is a compositional choice. The camera is treating Morty as the center of the frame. That is a different visual relationship between the character and the audience than the show has typically maintained across 9 seasons of almost always using Rick as the compositional anchor. The change in studios and the change in how Morty is being visually positioned might be separate things that happen to coincide in Season 9. The more likely reading is that they are related, that a season which is described as very new and very alien, and which is moving its characters into genuinely new emotional territory, made a production decision that aligns with that creative direction. A new studio brings new eyes. New eyes make different choices. Different choices in animation produce a different feeling in the finished product, even when the character designs and the writing and the voice performances remain consistent. Rick and Morty is animated using Toon Boom Harmony, a vector-based animation software that has been the show's production tool since the beginning. This has not changed for Season 9. The confirmed technical approach remains the same. Post-production work is done in Adobe After Effects, and background art is done in Adobe Photoshop. The pipeline is consistent. What changes is the human beings running that pipeline, making the choices within it, bringing their own sensibility to the execution of the scripts and storyboards they receive. Mercury Filmworks and Lighthouse Studios have their own histories, their own accumulated experience with how animated performance works, their own sense of what a held expression should feel like, and how long a reaction should breathe before the cut. Season 9 is the first season where all of that gets applied to Rick and Morty from the very first frame. The promotional material released so far, the animatic, the trailer, the first look images, suggest the transition has been managed carefully. Adult Swim president Michael Ueline said from the first frame, which is either a general statement of confidence or a very specific claim that the quality is visible immediately, in the first moment
of the first episode. The season was described as bigger, bolder, and more ambitious than ever by Adult Swim's promotional materials. Bigger and bolder are standard promotional language. More ambitious is the word that lands differently in the context of a studio change. Ambition in animation is expensive and difficult and requires a studio that can execute complex sequences without losing the visual consistency that the audience expects. Season 9 is the first test of whether Mercury Filmworks can carry that ambition across 10 episodes of a show that has established a very specific visual identity across 11 years of production.
The Adult Swim promotional marathon that ran leading up to the Season 9 premiere, weekly marathons of every season, starting with Season 1 on April 3rd, 2026, and running through Season 8 on May 22nd, 2026, functioned as a concentrated reminder of what Bardell's version of the show looked and felt like across its run. Every episode back-to-back in sequence, leading directly into the May 24th premiere of the first episode Mercury Filmworks has drawn. That sequencing is either accidental, or it is the network understanding that the contrast will be noticed and choosing to make it easy for the audience to see. The question of whether Season 9 looks different enough to feel different is one that will be answered 6 days from now when the premiere airs. What is already confirmed is that the people drawing it are new, the studios drawing it are new, and the creative team has described the season in terms that suggest the content inside those new frames is also operating in territory the show has not previously mapped. A new studio, a more capable Morty, an unresolved Mr. Poopy Butthole, an evil Morty confirmed as the central villain, Rick heading somewhere constructive, and a finale where Morty is alone with a portal gun. All of that is confirmed. All of that is real. What the show has not yet confirmed, what is still being kept under embargo until episodes actually air, is what the new animation studio does with the episode that is going to be the hardest to pull off. Not the action sequences. Those are hard, but they are a known quantity. The hardest episode to pull off is the one where the show does something with false reality in a totally different way from Season 7, which Martyr teased in the Reddit AMA. That kind of episode lives or dies on specific visual choices. The way false reality looks on screen, how the show signals to the audience that what they are seeing is not what the characters believe it is an animation problem as much as a writing problem. How Mercury Filmworks handles that specific challenge will say more about what the studio change means for the show than any action sequence or crowd scene will. Before we move on, if you're enjoying this analysis, please consider subscribing. It helps the channel tremendously. And the episode most likely to carry that challenge, based on the title and its position in the season, points directly at the part of Season 9 that everything else has been quietly circling. Section 8, Requiem Mort a Dream, the episode that might break everything. There is a film called Requiem for a Dream. It came out in the year 2000, directed by Darren Aronofsky, and it follows 4 people across a single summer as the things they depend on to feel okay about their lives consume them completely. A mother addicted to diet pills and television, a young man and his girlfriend trying to build a future on money from selling drugs, his best friend along for the same ride. The film does not have a villain in the traditional sense. The thing that destroys everyone in it is ordinary. The need to feel good, the need to feel like things are going somewhere, the need for something to hold on to when life is difficult. The film takes those ordinary human needs and shows what happens when the thing satisfying them is also the thing destroying you, and it does not look away from where that ends. Episode 8 of Season 9 is called Requiem Mort a Dream. That is the show directly naming a Requiem for a Dream episode. Not gesturing at it, not burying the reference in something else, putting the name of one of the most brutal films ever made directly into the title of an episode airing on July 12, 2026. Episode 8 of 10. 2 episodes from the finale. Right at the point in the season where a 10-episode run is finishing its second act and moving into the final push. The placement matters as much as the title. Episode 8 is not the finale. The finale is Field of Dreams, which is built around nostalgia and grief and the possibility of something returning that was lost. Episode 8, 2 weeks before that, is named after a film about things falling apart. The emotional logic of that sequence, collapse in Episode 8, something quieter and more complex in the finale, is a specific structure. The show is not ending on destruction. It is moving through destruction towards something else. What that something else is lives in the storyboards that show Morty alone with a portal gun on July 26th. Rick's alcoholism has been present in the show since the pilot episode. The very first scene of Rick and Morty that audiences ever saw, before the opening credits of the first episode, showed Rick drunk. He woke Morty up in the middle of the
night slurring with a device he had built while drinking. The device was going to destroy the world. Rick did not remember making it. This is how the show introduced its central character, as a genius whose greatest threat is himself, whose intelligence and self-destruction are so thoroughly mixed together that separating them is impossible. Across 9 seasons, Rick's drinking has been treated as many different things depending on what the episode needed it to be. Sometimes it is comedy. Rick being drunk is funny, and the show knows this and uses it. Sometimes it is a coping mechanism the show acknowledges without dwelling on. Rick drinks when he is in pain, and the show has shown this clearly enough that it cannot be read as accidental.
And occasionally, across specific episodes in seasons 6, 7, and 8, the show has treated Rick's alcoholism with something closer to genuine weight. Not a problem to be solved, not a joke, a fact about this person that is connected to everything else difficult about him. Requiem for a Dream is a film specifically about addiction. Not about the drama of addiction, not about the recovery arc that most stories about addiction eventually reach for. It is about the experience of being inside it. The way the thing you depend on feels necessary, even as it is taking you apart. The way the people around an addicted person get pulled into the destruction without choosing to be. The film structure follows multiple characters simultaneously, because that is how addiction actually works in a life. It does not contain itself to one person. It radiates outward. And episode 8, called Requiem Morty a Dream, in a season where Rick is supposedly heading in a constructive new direction, is the show acknowledging that constructive directions are not smooth. People do not change in straight lines. Rick Sanchez specifically has been established across 9 seasons as someone who has tried to manage his own pain in ways that have worked exactly well enough to keep him functional and exactly badly enough to keep causing damage. The revenge mission against Rick Prime was itself a form of this, a purpose so consuming that it could justify anything, including the drinking, including the distance, including the choices that hurt the people around him. The revenge mission is gone now. Rick sealed away a memory of Diane in the season 8 finale. He is, by Scott Marder's own description, heading somewhere constructive. But constructive directions in real lives and in the lives of fictional characters written with genuine care do not skip the part where the thing that was being held together by the old purpose starts to come apart. The drinking that was managed by having a goal might become something harder to manage without one. The grief that was being processed through action might surface differently when there is no action left to take. Requiem Morty a Dream, as an episode title suggests, the show is not skipping that part. The Morty element of the title is important too. The Requiem for a Dream film follows multiple people simultaneously, and the destruction in it is not one person's story. It is the story of what happens to everyone connected to the person or people at the center of it. Rick and Morty is not a show about Rick alone. It has always been a show about what Rick's presence does to Morty, to Beth, to the family around him. An episode called Requiem Morty a Dream, placing both names in the title of a Requiem for a Dream reference, is explicitly saying that whatever happens in this episode happens to both of them, not just Rick and Morty. The original film's title, Requiem for a Dream, uses the word requiem. A requiem is a piece of music written for the dead, or a ceremony held to honor someone who has died. The dream in the title is not a sleeping dream. It is the kind of dream that means a hope, an aspiration, the vision of a life that was supposed to happen and did not. A requiem for a dream is a mourning for something that was wanted and lost. 4 characters in the film lose different things: a future, a relationship, a sense of self, a connection to reality. The common thread is that each of them had something they were reaching toward, and the reaching destroyed them. In Rick and Morty's version of this, the dreams being mourned are not hidden. Rick's dream of having Diane back is gone. The Omega device already made sure of that permanently. Rick's dream of punishing Rick Prime is fulfilled, but empty. Morty's dream of a normal life, which the show has tracked across 9 seasons through his relationship with Jessica and his attempts to maintain something ordinary while everything around him is extraordinary, has been consistently deferred and complicated by every season of adventures. The episode titled after a film about the mourning of lost futures, placed at episode 8 of 10, suggests the show is ready to sit with what both of these characters have lost before the finale moves them somewhere new. Dan Harmon describes season 9 as very new and very alien. The alien part is interesting in this context. Alien means unfamiliar, foreign, something encountered that does not map onto existing knowledge or experience. For Rick, a version of himself that is not organized around grief and revenge is genuinely alien territory. He has been that man, the one running from Diane's death toward Rick Prime's death for so long that operating
operating without that structure might feel more disorienting than any actual alien encounter the show has put him through. Very alien might mean that Season 9 takes Rick into the most personally unfamiliar territory he has ever occupied. The Reddit AMA with Scott Martyr confirmed that Season 9 contains an episode dealing with false reality in a totally different way from Season 7's Fear No Mort. Fear No Mort was specifically about Rick being trapped inside a simulation of his own fears, a false reality designed to break him by confronting him with the things he was most afraid of. The false reality in that episode was an external construction, something done to Rick by a technology or entity outside himself. A false reality handled in a totally different way would most logically be an internal one, not a simulation imposed from outside, a reality that Rick or Morty or someone in the show has constructed for themselves from the inside, a way of seeing their own life that the episode then dismantles. Addiction creates a false reality of its own kind. The person inside it experiences their relationship with the thing they depend on as necessary and manageable, even when the evidence visible to everyone else says differently. Requiem for a Dream is built around the gap between what the characters believe about their situation and what is actually happening to them. That gap, the space between how someone understands their own life and what their life actually looks like, is exactly what a false reality episode would explore if it were doing something totally different from Fear No Mort. The positioning of Requiem for a Dream at episode 8, 2 weeks before the finale, and the Martyr confirmation of a false reality episode somewhere in the season creates a strong logical connection between the two pieces of confirmed information. The episode most likely to be the false reality episode, based on its title, its placement, and the specific source material it references, is episode 8. Mort Gully, The Last Rick Forest, episode 7, airs the week before it. The title references Fern Gully, The Last Rainforest, the 1992 animated film about a fairy who shrinks a logging worker down to her size and shows him what his world looks like from inside the thing he has been destroying. Fern Gully is specifically about perspective, about what changes when you are forced to experience something from a completely different vantage point than the one you normally occupy. An episode 7 that is built around forced perspective change, followed by an episode 8 about the collapse of a dream, followed by episode 9 where Summer is in a position of unexpected authority, followed by the finale where Morty is alone with a portal gun. That is a sequence with a shape to it. Forced perspective in episode 7, collapse in episode 8, something unexpected from an unexpected character in episode 9, and then Morty alone in the finale. The season 9 first look images released by Adult Swim included one that shows a creepy figure walking out of an RV in the dark. Nobody in the coverage of season 9 has been able to definitively identify this figure. An RV is a specific visual object. It is a vehicle people live in, a home that moves, a choice to be somewhere temporarily rather than permanently. In the context of a season where Rick is trying to be something new, an RV could represent a version of that portable, non-committed way of existing. The creepy quality of the figure emerging from it suggests that whatever is inside that vehicle is not benign. Whether this connects to the Requiem for a Dream episode or to one of the others surrounding it is genuinely unknown. What is known is that episode 8 carries the weight of the most emotionally specific title in the season's lineup. Every other title is a pun. Funny, playful, built around the wordplay the show has always used to name its episodes. Requiem for a Dream is a pun too, technically, but Requiem for a Dream is not a playful source. The show has borrowed the name of one of the most deliberately difficult films ever made and placed it at the most structurally significant position in a season that is supposed to be taking its characters somewhere new and constructive. The only way a constructive direction is meaningful in a story is if the path toward it includes the moment where not going there felt easier. The moment where the old patterns reasserted themselves, where the drinking was the answer again, where the distance was easier than the presence, where the grief and the self-destruction were more familiar than whatever the constructive alternative required. Episode 8 is that moment. And episode 9, Salute Your Morts, coming directly after it, is named after a show about young people at summer camp who keep going anyway, who operate within a difficult structure, who find ways to claim their own space even when the authority around them is crushing, who refuse to let the hard thing be the last thing. Summer, in a camp setting, in the episode immediately after whatever episode 8 does to Rick and Morty. That sequence is not random. The show put it there deliberately, and the deliberateness points at something the finale then has to resolve. How Rick and Morty resolve
resolve it, and whether the portal gun Morty is carrying alone in the finale storyboards is a sign of growth or of something breaking, depends on what the show does with the one character who has been watching all of this build from the very beginning of Season 9, and who the premiere told the audience is at the center of everything. Before we move on, if you're enjoying this analysis, please consider subscribing. It helps the channel tremendously. There is something about Morty. After 8 episodes of the season have run, with episode 8 named after a film about the destruction of dreams, whatever that something is will either be the thing that holds or the thing that breaks. Section 9, Salute Your Morts, the summer episode, and what the show does with its forgotten characters. Summer Smith has always been the most underused character in a show full of characters who deserve more space than they get. She has been present since the pilot episode. She has been in the house, at the dinner table, occasionally in the car when Rick drives through a portal, sometimes on the adventure, and sometimes very deliberately left out of it. Across 9 seasons, she has had moments, real ones, scenes where the show remembered that Summer is not background furniture, but an actual person with her own interior life and her own response to the genuinely insane circumstances she has been living inside since her grandfather showed up and converted the garage into a laboratory. But the show has never given her a season that felt like hers, the way Season 7 and Season 8 felt like Rick's, or the way the premiere of Season 9 apparently feels like Morty's. Summer has always existed in the in-between spaces. She gets an episode here and an arc fragment there, and then the show pulls back and returns her to the position of Morty's older sister, Rick's occasional adventure companion, Beth's daughter, the teenager in the house. Episode 9 of Season 9 is called Salute Your Morts. Spencer Grammer, who has voiced Summer since the show's first episode in 2013, appeared in official promotional material for Season 9 dressed as Kevin Ugg Lee, the camp counselor from Salute Your Shorts, the Nickelodeon show that aired from 1991 to 1992. The image was released by Adult Swim as part of the Season 9 promotional campaign. That is a confirmed, specific piece of visual information. The voice actress for Summer, in the costume of the authority figure from the show the episode title references, photographed for official promotional use. Episode 9 is a summer episode. It is set at a camp, and the show puts Summer in the position of the counselor, not the camper. Salute Your Shorts ran for 2 seasons on Nickelodeon, and became one of the most remembered children's shows of the early 90s. The premise was simple. A group of misfit kids at Camp Anawana stuck together for the summer, dealing with a strict and slightly ridiculous counselor named Kevin Ugg Lee, who wanted order and got chaos. The kids were not evil. They were just kids. Inventive, resistant to being controlled, finding ways to exist on their own terms within a system designed to manage them. The humor came from the gap between what the authority figure wanted and what actually happened, and from the kids' consistent refusal to be diminished by the structure they were placed in. Applying that framework to Summer in a Rick and Morty episode is doing something specific. Summer has spent 9 seasons as the person in the structure. She lives in the Smith household, which is organized entirely around Rick. Every decision that affects the family filters through Rick's presence and Rick's agenda and Rick's ideas about what is happening and what should happen next. Beth defers to Rick more than she admits. Jerry has been in open conflict with Rick's influence since Season 1 and has consistently lost. Morty is the person Rick chose to bring along, which gives Morty a specific and complicated position in the hierarchy. Summer is the one who was not chosen. She is there because she lives there. The Salute Your Shorts structure, where Summer is in the position of Kevin Ugg Lee, the authority figure, puts her in charge for the first time. Not in charge within the Smith household, not managing a situation while Rick is temporarily unavailable, in charge of a camp, of other people, of a structure she is running rather than existing within. The kids at Camp Anawana resisted Kevin Ugg Lee constantly, and the humor of the show came from his inability to fully control the chaos around him. If Summer is Kevin Ugg Lee in this episode, then whatever version of the misfit kids exists in the Rick and Morty universe is pushing back against her. And Summer having to figure out how to be an authority figure, how to hold a structure together from the top rather than navigate one from the middle, is new territory for a character who has always been somewhere in the middle. Season 8's Summer of All Fear is the episode that most directly set up what Season 9 appears to be doing with her. Coverage of that episode described Summer as operating more like Elon Musk than her loving teenage self. That description is pointed and unflattering in a specific way. It is not saying Summer became a superhero or a villain. It is saying she became something more familiar and more troubling than either of those things. Someone who operates with total confidence in their own rightness, who uses capability as a substitute
substitute for consideration, who moves fast and breaks things, and treats the breaking as evidence of forward motion rather than as something that has a cost. That version of Summer is already present before Season 9 begins. Putting that version of Summer in a camp counselor role, responsible for other people, is a setup. The show does not put a character in a position of authority over others because it wants to show them being good at it without complication.
The show puts a character in a position of authority because it wants to examine what that character's specific flaws look like when they have power instead of when they are subject to it. Summer getting harder, more capable of the kind of cold decisiveness that Rick uses and that Season 8 showed Beth developing, is confirmed by the trajectory of her character across the seasons leading into Season 9. The question of what that hardness looks like when Summer is responsible for other people, when the consequences of her choices fall on people who did not sign up for whatever Rick Sanchez adjacent chaos follows the Smith family everywhere it goes, is what Salute Your Morts is apparently built to explore. Episode 9 of 10, one episode before the finale. The structural position of a summer episode at episode 9 is significant. In a 10-episode season, episode 9 is where the second to last piece of the argument lands before the finale closes it. The show put a summer episode there, not another Rick and Morty adventure, not a mythology-heavy episode that advances the Evil Morty storyline or the Mr. Poopy Butthole situation. A summer episode at camp, 2 weeks before a finale where Morty is alone with a portal gun. That placement suggests Summer's episode is not a detour from the season's main concerns. It is the second to last statement the season makes before the finale. Whatever happens to Summer at camp, in the position of the authority figure, dealing with the misfit kids below her, is something the show considered important enough to put directly before its ending. The broader character landscape around Summer in Season 9 is worth looking at here. Scott Martyr confirmed in the Reddit AMA that the upcoming seasons have arcs for Jessica, Evil Morty, Squanchy, Bird Person, Bird Daughter, and others. Summer was not named specifically in that confirmation, but the episode title, the confirmed Spencer Grammer promotional image, and the structural position of episode 9 all point at a summer season in ways that are hard to read as accidental. The show renewed through Season 12 at New York Comic-Con in October 2024. Seasons 10 and 11 are already in production and writing, respectively, according to Steve Levy's Reddit AMA confirmation. The show is running far enough ahead of itself that character arcs being developed in Season 9 will have room to continue and develop across multiple subsequent seasons. A summer episode placed at episode 9 of Season 9, building on the harder version of Summer established in Season 8, in a position of authority she has never occupied before, is almost certainly not a standalone thing that resolves entirely within its episode. The show is planting something in Salute Your Morts that Season 10 or Season 11 will pick up. Squanchy being confirmed for upcoming arcs connects to Summer in a direction that has not been discussed much in coverage of Season 9. Squanchy is one of Rick's oldest friends, part of the Rebellion era, present at Bird Person's wedding in Season 2, someone whose history with Rick goes back to before the show begins. He is also a character who, like Bird Person, represents the part of Rick's life that existed before the Smith family, before the domestic structure, before the version of Rick that the audience has been watching. His arcs coming in upcoming seasons means the show is returning to that era of Rick's history, which means Bird Person is also returning to relevance, and Bird Daughter along with him. Bird Daughter is Morty's daughter. Her existence in the show's universe is one of its most genuinely strange ongoing threads. Morty, through the events of Season 2, fathered a child with an alien woman on a planet called Gazorpazorp. That child, Morty Jr., was introduced in Season 2 and briefly reappeared in Season 8's Morty Daddy. Bird Daughter is different. She is the daughter of Morty and Tammy, who was Bird Person's wife before her death, making her family across two different lineages simultaneously. The show has not dwelt on this relationship, but it exists, and it is confirmed as having arcs coming. The web of confirmed character arcs across Season 9 and beyond builds a picture of a show that is expanding its scope rather than contracting it. More characters, more histories, more ongoing threads. This is consistent with the production information. Season 10 in production, Season 11 in writing, and with the Adult Swim confirmation of renewals through Season 12. The show is not wrapping up. Season 9 is the beginning of a new phase, and Salute Your Morts, placed where it is in that season, appears to be establishing Summer's place in what comes next. Going back to the Camp Anawana structure one more time, the kids at Camp Anawana resisted Kevin Ugg Lee, but the show was never cruel about him. He was not a villain. He was a person trying to maintain order in a situation that consistently refused to be orderly, and the show found him funny because his attempts were recognizable. Anyone who has ever tried to control something that does not want to be controlled
world understands that specific frustration. Summer, as Kevin Ugly, is funny for the same reason it is structurally interesting. She is the person who has never been in control, trying to be in control. And the camp full of whoever the Rick and Morty version of Misfit Kids turns out to be is going to resist her exactly as much as the universe has always resisted the people around Rick who try to impose order on chaos. The difference is that Summer has been raised inside the chaos. She has been living adjacent to Rick Sanchez since she was a teenager. She knows what the chaos looks like from the inside. Kevin Ugly at Camp Anawana did not have that advantage. Summer does. Whether that advantage makes her better at handling what the camp throws at her, or whether the specific kind of hardness she has developed from 9 seasons of living inside Rick's orbit makes her worse at it, more controlling, more cold, more willing to use the authority she has been given in ways that damage rather than organize, is the question Salute Your Morts is built around. The answer to that question, whatever the episode delivers, arrives 1 week before Morty is alone with a portal gun. 2 characters from the same family, in different places, carrying different things from the same 9 seasons of living with Rick Sanchez. Summer at a camp, trying to hold something together. Morty in the finale, carrying the tool that represents everything Rick built, alone. The show began with Rick choosing Morty, bringing him along, using him as a shield, as a companion, as the human connection that kept Rick tethered to something when the nihilism and the drinking and the grief threatened to pull him away from everything. The show put Summer at the edges of that choice for 9 seasons. The granddaughter who was not selected, who was present but not central, who built her own capabilities within a structure organized around her brother and her grandfather. Season 9, at episode 9, puts her in charge of something for the first time. Whatever she does with that charge, however the camp episode resolves, whatever the show decides Summer is capable of when nobody is pulling her along, is the show finally answering a question it has been deferring since season 1. What is Summer Smith when the show is actually paying attention to her? The finale knows the answer to a different question. Morty, alone with a portal gun, roaming freely in the storyboards for Field of Dreams, is the show answering what Morty is when Rick is not there. 2 members of the same family, finding out what they are without the structure that has defined them in the last 2 episodes of a season that has been building toward exactly this kind of reckoning since its very first frame. Before we move on, if you're enjoying this analysis, please consider subscribing. It helps the channel tremendously. What the finale does with both of those answers, and what the Field of Dreams title suggests about what gets built in the space they open up, is where everything that Season 9 has constructed now has to arrive. Section 10, Field of Dreams, the finale, and what the show is actually building toward. There is a line from the 1989 film Field of Dreams that most people know even if they have never seen the movie. If you build it, he will come. A farmer in Iowa hears a voice. The voice tells him to build a baseball field in the middle of his cornfield. He does it. The ghosts of dead baseball players appear and play on the field. And eventually, at the end of the film, his own father appears. His father, who died before things between them were finished, before the conversations that needed to happen had happened, before the distance that had grown between them across years of silence had been crossed. The father appears as a young man, younger than the son is now, and they play catch in the fading light, and the film ends there, not with a resolution of everything, with one small, specific thing that was lost being temporarily, gently returned. The field did not bring the father back permanently. The field made space for something that grief had closed off. Building the thing created the conditions for what was needed to arrive. Rick and Morty Season 9 ends with an episode called Field of Dreams on July 26, 2026. The storyboards for this episode were released by Adult Swim as official promotional material. In those storyboards, Morty is visible roaming on his own with a portal gun. No Rick in the frame. Morty, the portal gun, and wherever the portal gun takes him. This is confirmed visual information from the people making the show, released deliberately as part of the Season 9 promotional campaign. They chose to show this image before the season aired. That choice is its own statement. The show wanted the audience going into Season 9 knowing that this is where it ends up. Morty, alone, with the tool that has always belonged to Rick. Every piece of confirmed information about Season 9 points toward this image and what it represents. The premiere is called There's Something About Morty. Episode 1 establishes that Morty is the center of something, that there is a quality to him, a something that the season is going to examine. 10 episodes later, the finale shows Morty operating independently with a portal gun. Whatever the something about Morty turned out to be, it was enough to get him here. Alone in the finale frame, portal gun in hand, going somewhere without Rick. Rick. The Field of Dreams film works as a reference on multiple levels simultaneously, and the show chose it for its finale title with full awareness of all of them. The most obvious level is the ghost level, the dead returning, the people who were lost appearing in the space created by someone willing to build something and wait. Season 9 is the first season of Rick and Morty operating without the Diane storyline as an active wound. Rick sealed a memory of her in the Season 8 finale. The Omega device has already erased every version of Diane from every reality. She is gone in every direction. And yet the Field of Dreams structure, build something, and what was lost finds its way to you, is the frame the show chose for its Season 9 ending. The ghost that shows up in the Field of Dreams film is not the person the farmer expected. He built the field thinking it was about the baseball players, about the legendary figures of the sport. The ghost that matters turns out to be his father. The personal thing hiding inside the grand gesture. The real need underneath the stated one. Rick, operating in Season 9 without a mission and without the grief as an active organizing force, heading in a constructive new direction according to Scott Martyr, might be building something in Season 9 that he believes is about one thing, and that turns out to be about something else entirely. That is what the Field of Dreams structure does. It reveals what you were actually reaching for underneath what you thought you were reaching for. Dan Harmon describes Season 9 as very new and very alien. Both of those descriptions apply to a version of Rick who is trying to build rather than destroy for the first time in the show's run. Very new because the show has never sustained this version of Rick across an entire season before. Very alien because Rick himself has never been this person before. The grief and the mission were as much a part of his identity as the intelligence and the drinking, and without them he is in territory he does not have a map for. The Field of Dreams title, at the end of a season built around this version of Rick, suggests that whatever he builds across Season 9, whatever constructive thing he reaches toward, whatever new relationship with Morty or Beth or the family he attempts, will bring something to him in the finale. The show is not going to give Rick a clean resolution. That is not what the show does, and it is not what the Field of Dreams film does either. What it will give him, based on the structural logic of the title and the confirmed storyboard image, is a moment. A specific, quiet, precise moment where something that was closed opens slightly. Morty with the portal gun is that moment. Not Rick using the portal gun while Morty follows. Morty, independently, going somewhere. The portal gun is Rick's most essential tool, the thing that makes everything possible, the device that opened the first portal the audience ever saw, and that has been the physical symbol of Rick's power and Rick's world across every season. Morty operating it alone, in the finale, is not a logistics question about where Rick is during that scene. It is a statement about what has changed between the premiere and the finale. Something about Morty was the question in Episode 1. Morty with a portal gun alone is part of the answer in Episode 10. The Field of Dreams film ends with the father and son playing catch, a small physical act between two people who love each other and have not found a way to say it cleanly. The game creates a space for the feeling without requiring the words. Rick and Morty has always operated this way too. The feelings between Rick and Morty are expressed through the adventures, through the actions, through what they do for each other in moments of crisis, rather than through direct statements of love or care. The fireside image in the first look promotional photos, Rick and Morty sitting by a fire together, quiet, no crisis visible in the frame, is the show's version of playing catch. Two people, a fire, nothing to run from or fight, just the being there. That image, released before the season aired, is almost certainly from the finale, or from an episode late in the season's run. The show does not put its most emotionally significant image in the first half of a 10-episode season. The fireside moment is where the season lands emotionally. Everything before it is what gets Rick and Morty to a place where that moment is possible. The confirmed production information about where the show is beyond Season 9 adds a layer to what the finale is doing. Season 10 is already in production. Season 11 is already being written. The show is confirmed through Season 12. A Season 9 finale is not an ending, it is a foundation. What Field of Dreams builds in its episode, whatever it establishes about Morty's independence and Rick's constructive direction and the new phase of the show, is the ground that Seasons 10, 11, and 12 will build on top of. This is why Morty alone with a portal gun is so significant as an image. The show is not ending Morty's independence in the finale, it is beginning it. The portal gun in Morty's hands in the Season 9 finale is the show establishing a new status quo, a version of Morty who can operate without Rick, who has earned or been given or taken the ability to go through a portal independently, who is no longer entirely defined by his position as Rick's companion and shield. Whatever the next 3 seasons do with that version of Morty starts from this image on July 26, 2026. Evil Morty is confirmed as the show's central villain going forward. Evil Morty has the plans for the Omega device, and Evil Morty, every time he has appeared across the show's run, has appeared specifically in contrast to the main Morty, as the version
version of Morty that took the experiences Rick put him through and turned them into something cold and strategic and free of the emotional attachment that keeps the main Morty from becoming what Evil Morty is. The distance between main Morty and Evil Morty has always been defined by that attachment, by how much main Morty still genuinely cares about Rick, still needs Rick, still exists in relationship to Rick rather than in opposition to him. A finale that shows Morty alone with a portal gun is closing that distance, not eliminating it. The fireside image suggests the relationship between Rick and Morty is not broken in the finale, that there is something warm and intact in how they arrive at the end of season 9, but closing it. Morty in the finale is more capable, more independent, more his own thing than any previous version of Morty the show has shown. And the closer main Morty gets to being his own thing, the more interesting the question of Evil Morty becomes. Two versions of the same person, both now capable of operating independently, both in possession of different things that can reshape the multiverse. The Omega device on one side, the portal gun on the other. Scott Martyr confirmed in the Reddit AMA that portal colors have meaning. The portal gun creates portals of a specific color, green typically, the color associated with Rick's portal fluid and with the show's visual identity across its entire run. If Morty uses the portal gun in the finale and the portal is a different color, that color means something specific and confirmed by the showrunner. If the portal is green, that too is a statement. Morty going somewhere through Rick's portal, not a new kind of portal, but the existing one, which would say something different about the nature of the independence the finale is establishing. The show has been running the Adult Swim promotional marathon since April 3rd, 2026. Every season in sequence, every Friday, leading directly to the May 24th premiere. Season 1 on April 3rd, Season 8 on May 22nd, and then Season 9 beginning 2 days later. 13 years of the show, compressed into a 7-week rewatch, ending with the first episode Mercury Filmworks has drawn, landing the same weekend the marathon finishes Season 8. The audience arriving at the Season 9 premiere has just been given, by Adult Swim's own scheduling, the complete picture of everything that came before. Every Diane reference, every Evil Morty appearance, every Mr. Poopy Butthole post-credits scene, every moment of Rick and Morty sitting somewhere quiet and finding a way to express something neither of them can say directly. And then the premiere, There's Something About Morty. 10 weeks later, Field of Dreams. The show confirmed at New York Comic Con in October 2024 that it is renewed through Season 12. The President Curtis spinoff is already in development. Rick and Morty as a franchise is expanding, not concluding. Season 9 is the pivot point, the season where the show moves from the era defined by Rick Prime and Diane and revenge into something that Harmon called very new and very alien. Field of Dreams as a finale title is the show naming what that new era is built on. Not destruction, not revenge, not grief as a daily operating mode. Something being built, a field being cleared, and whatever was lost, or whatever was always waiting, finding its way to what was built. The voice of Kevin Costner's character in Field of Dreams, when it told him to build the baseball field, was never fully explained. The film did not clarify exactly what the voice was, or where it came from, or why it chose him. It just said, build it, and he built it, and the thing that was needed arrived. Rick Sanchez has spent 9 seasons being told, in various ways, what to destroy. Rick Prime, the Citadel, the Galactic Federation, the things that were in the way. Season 9, by Scott Martyr's own description, is the season where Rick goes somewhere constructive instead, where he builds rather than demolishes. The Field of Dreams finale is what gets built when Rick Sanchez, for the first time in the show's history, actually tries. Morty, alone, with a portal gun, going somewhere in the fading light of the Season 9 finale. Build it, and something comes. What comes after? What Morty finds on the other side of that portal, what the colors of that portal signal, and what Rick does in Season 10 with a constructive direction and a grandson who can now go through portals alone, is the question the finale leaves open. And there is one more thing Season 9 has been building toward that none of the episode titles, none of the trailers, and none of the storyboards have fully addressed yet. The thing hiding in plain sight since Section 1 of this entire conversation. The detail that connects Mr. Poopy Butthole's facility to the Omega device, to Diane, to the central finite curve, to everything else. If you enjoyed this video essay, make sure to subscribe. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.